ادع إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن إن ربك هو أعلم بمن ضل عن سبيله.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبع الهدى. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. All praises are due to Allah, and may peace and blessings be sent upon the noble Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May greetings of peace be upon all of you, brothers and sisters in Islam, friends, colleagues, students, followers. Tonight we're going to discuss an article which was forwarded to me by one of my friends, one of my colleagues. An article which was actually written by somebody by the name of Dennis Jaron, who writes articles on a website called infidels.org. So Dennis Jaron, in his article, which is entitled, "Does Islamic Literature Contain Scientific Miracles?" In his article, he mentioned that the Quran and Sunnah contain numerous myths and scientific errors within the text of the Quran and Hadith. So this is a rebuttal and an attempt to clarify many of the deficiencies and false claims that Dennis Jaron put forth in his article. Number one, hoping that he will retract his statements, and secondly, learn to speak only about that which he has knowledge about. So throughout his article, he attempted to prove that the Quran and the Hadith contain numerous myths and scientific errors. But unfortunately for him, he failed to prove any of his claims with any decisive, clear-cut proofs or evidences. Not only that, but he also proved his deficiencies in his scientific research skills, as well as his clear lack of knowledge and understanding of the Arabic language, upon which the majority of his false claims revolve. He disregarded numerous modern-day scientific studies that contradict many of his claims in this article, and actually prove his lack of proficiency in researching the topics that he mentioned here in this article, as well as proved his lack of understanding not only of the Arabic language, but also his lack of knowledge of the nature of science and scientific research, his lack of knowledge and understanding of life, and his lack of knowledge of understanding logic. And to add on to that, he didn't keep in mind, and this is one of the major mistakes that he made in his article here, he didn't keep in mind that scientific studies and research cannot be 100% correct at all times in all places. Why is this? This is because as time progresses, new discoveries are found, and what one may have discovered 50 years ago or 100 years ago may have changed with the new technology which is available to us today, and an increase in resources which are available to us today. So in many statements throughout his article, he based his claims upon a principle which is very famous amongst the philosophers, amongst the naturalists, amongst the atheists, a principle in which they say not having knowledge or not being able to perceive something with the five senses means that the thing in itself doesn't exist. So I rebutted not only this false principle throughout the article, but many of his other false claims, not only with logical but also scientific proofs. Furthermore, the majority of Mr. Jaron's claims, as I mentioned, many of his claims and doubts and misconceptions contained in this article have been previously rebutted by scholars hundreds of years ago. And what Mr. Jaron did, which is kind of disappointing for him, is he just took some old doubts and old misconceptions and things that the previous philosophers and those who tried to talk bad about Islam and the Quran and Hadith, he just took some of their doubts and tried to clothe them with a different type of garment. But all praises are due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who enabled us and enabled our brother who sent this article to detect it and forward it to us. So we detected the wolves in the sheep's clothing. So throughout my rebuttal, if there were any claims that were previously rebutted, I would mention them and mention the scholars who rebutted them. But if not, then I would rebut them myself. And all success is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Dennis Jaron, he says, over the last decade, growing numbers of Muslims have declared the Quran to be a book filled with alleged scientific miracles. Numerous websites, books, and videos have been produced that proclaim Islam to be truly a religion of divine origin, citing scientifically accurate statements in the Quran and Hadith. So I respond to him and I say, Dennis, not only do Muslims declare that the Quran contains scientific miracles, but even non-Muslims as well. Type in Google and see non-Muslims declaring scientific miracles in the Quran. And I'll just give you some names. For example, Hamilton Gibb, Paul Casanova, Harry Gaylord, Edwards Motet, John Nash, George Sales, Dr. Joe Lee Simpson, Dr. E. Marshall Johnson, and many others. So I'm sorry to say, Dennis, that you're mistaken. And many of your mistakes here in this article are based upon your lack of understanding of the Arabic language. And certainly the one who doesn't understand the language of the Quran, which is Arabic, and the language of the Hadith, which is Arabic, how can you speak about them or criticize them? Let me ask you a question, Dennis. Would you accept this speech and criticisms of an Arab who didn't know how to read or write or understand English? Would you accept his criticisms about Shakespeare's books? So should the intelligent person and the one who thinks in a logical way accept some of the false claims and doubts that you're mentioning here, while they are based upon your lack of knowledge and understanding of the Arabic language? Truly, this is the biggest absurdity in logic as well as science and common sense. So it becomes clearly apparent throughout your article, Dennis, that you based your claims and conclusions upon the English translation of the Quran and Hadith. And this was the biggest and the first mistake that you made. And this is because the translation of the Quran is the translation of the meanings of the verses and the meanings of the Hadith, not the literal translations. And I ask you again, did you refer back to the books of tafsir, the commentary on Quran and Hadith? And in order you to understand those books, you need to understand Arabic grammar, Arabic syntax. So let me ask you another question. So should any of us accept your claims here in this article? Would any intellectual or rational thinker accept the things that you're saying? Let me ask you another question. What do you think of an illiterate farmer? What do you think of an illiterate farmer who didn't know how to read or write? Only thing he knew how to do is till the soil, take care of his farm animals, reap his harvests, cut down the corn, plant vegetables, plant fruits, things like this. An illiterate farmer who doesn't know anything about medicine or medical terminologies. Would you accept his claim? Or would you depend upon his medical advice or counseling? If you needed heart surgery and you needed it right away, would you allow him to perform that surgery upon you? So what about accepting the claims of you who doesn't know Arabic language and are trying to speak about the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of the universe, the creator of you and me? So basically, all throughout your article, you based your claims and criticisms upon the following. Number one, your lack of knowledge and understanding of the Arabic language. Number two, your deficient knowledge of scientific research and the nature of scientific research and studies, while ignoring the fact that these types of research are subject to change with time. Thirdly, your personal opinions and views that are based upon deficient principles which are normally studied amongst the likes of atheists, philosophers, and naturalists. So basically, everything you mentioned in this article, Dennis, it was a waste of your time, waste of your efforts. And it would have been better for you my advice to you, it would have been better for you to search for your Creator and your purpose of your life here on earth. So then Dennis, he goes on to say, he says, scientific absurdities in the Quran and Hadith. He says, to believe in the Quran is to not think rationally. There are numerous myths and scientific errors within the text of Quran and Hadith. I say to you once again, Dennis, you are mistaken again. And actually the opposite is correct. Because those who believe in the Quran are from the most knowledgeable and intellectual of all human beings. And they are the ones who think in a logical and rational way. Rather, the way you are thinking is illogical. The Muslims are the ones who've recognized the signs in creation by their five senses and by their natural disposition, and recognize these signs around them as proofs for the Almighty Creator. And we have submitted to Him in worship. So we know our Creator. The Muslims know our Creator. And we know that this universe and everything that it contains, from precision, from accuracy, from organization, from categorization and the likes, must have come from a wise, perfect, complete, and knowledgeable Creator. There's no doubt about that. And it's impossible that all this order and organization that we see in the creation came from chaos, or originated from nothing, or came about by coincidence, or by nature, as you claim and think. So the Muslims are those who know the purpose of their creation and the goal behind their lives. So Dennis, is it logical and rational to think that if a monkey, let's suppose, a monkey entered a computer lab, and you told the monkey, hey monkey, write for me 2 pages on the computer, is it logical and rational to think that the monkey would come back with a nice 2-page essay or write something that you could understand? Also, let me ask you another thing. Is it possible or logical or rational to think that if me and you were standing on the side of a river, that a boat came, that wood from the forest which was behind us came in front of us and assembled itself into a boat, and then filled itself up with supplies, and then put down the door for us to enter the boat without a driver and without a captain. And then we rowed the boat, and it took us to the other side of the world without a captain and a driver, and delivered us to our destinations. Is this logical and rational to think? So what about the universe? Did it assemble itself? Or was there a great and magnificent and wise assembler? So the rational and logical thinker would completely deny this possibility, Dennis. So what about the Creator of this universe? It is not possible that this universe was created by coincidence. Nor was it a coincidence that monkeys would write an essay. Nor would it be coincidence that that boat could transport us to the other side of the world and assemble in front of us from the wood taken from the forest which was behind us, and transport us to the other side of the world without a captain. So based upon this, we can conclude and are sure and certain that everything that exists is dependent upon something to bring it into existence. And that the one that brings other things into existence must have the ability to do so and be qualified to do so as well. So Dennis, by observing the perfection, the completion, the accuracy and precision and organization in the creation, then we can only conclude that only a perfect and complete and magnificent Creator capable of all things could create such a universe. And He is the one who is able to do all things. He is the one who can make trees. He is the one who can make mosquitoes. He is the one who can make flies. He is the one who placed the cure and the disease in the wings of a fly. He is the one who can make stones talk, make clouds talk if He wishes. He is the one who made Jesus, the Son of Mary, to speak in the cradle. He is the one who created Jesus from a mother without a father. He is the one who created the father of mankind, Adam, from clay. He is able to do all things. So Dennis, then he goes on to say, he says, Muslims accept many scientific absurdities with blind devotion. So I respond to him and I say, of course, Dennis. The Muslims accept everything contained in the Quran and authentic Sunnah. This is because we use our intellects. We think logically, we think rationally. And we've only come to this conclusion after research, after observation, after studying and understanding and being upon the fitrah, being upon and staying and remaining upon the natural disposition that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us in. And after research and observation and studying the text contained in the Quran and Sunnah, we know that it's only revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that it's impossible for any human being to bring something similar as the Quran and Sunnah. Even the Arabs themselves, who read and write the same language, they were even unable to produce even one verse similar to a verse contained in the Quran. And because of this, the Muslims, whether they are Arab or non-Arab, believe in it and are certain 100% that the Quran is pure revelation from the Creator, and that the authentic Sunnah is pure revelation from the Creator as well. And this is how the intellectual, rational thinker should be after the truth is made clear to him. So Dennis, I challenge you now, and I'm waiting your response. I challenge you to name me one book in any subject you like, whether religious, science, astronomy, astrology, literature, physics. Name to me any book that is more precise, more accurate, more perfect, and complete than the book of Allah, the Quran, the final revelation to all mankind. But not only that, it has to have been preserved for over 1438 years. Mention to me one book that is better than the Quran in its eloquence, in its language, in its context, in its organization, in its comprehensiveness, and its preservation. Also, not only that, but you also have to mention me a book which contains all of these characteristics and traits. But not only that, but mention to me a book which millions of people throughout the world memorize in their hearts, from different backgrounds, from different cultures, from different races, from different nationalities, from different languages, like the Muslims memorize the Holy Quran. Young children, 5, 7, 8 years old, memorize it by heart. Men of all ages memorize it by heart. Women of all ages, all backgrounds, Arabs, non-Arabs, memorize this whole book by heart. Memorize this whole book by heart. 600 and some odd pages, according to the Muslims throughout the world, memorize this whole book by heart. Some who don't even know or understand the Arabic language, they memorize it by heart. So if this is not enough proof that this Quran is a miracle sent down by the Creator, then you really need to start thinking rationally and logically, Dennis. Also, Dennis, another request, challenge. Mention to me one book in the English language that millions of people memorize, from all different races, nationalities, languages, in different countries throughout the world. And they memorize it and have been memorizing it for over 1,000 years. So this is one of the reasons as to why Muslims are so, as you say, blindly devoted to the Quran and the authentic Sunnah. So Dennis, he goes on to say in his article, he says, the world has matured as a whole and has shed many of the fears and superstitions held by primitive cultures of the past. Unfortunately, because the text of the Quran is revered, people do not question many superstitious concepts that Muslims should have outgrown long ago. I say, Dennis, listen. The texts contained in the Quran and Sunnah are highly respected and honored because we know they're from the Creator of the universe, and they are the truth from the Creator, who taught them to the angel Gabriel, who taught them to the Prophet Muhammad, who then taught them to his disciples, who memorized it in their hearts, and who also wrote it down on parchments and papers. These disciples of the Prophet Muhammad, they used to ask him about everything. and he would only respond to them with revelation from the Creator. And our Prophet Muhammad, he taught us everything, even how to answer the call of nature, how to clean ourselves with water after defecating or urinating. Do you know how to do that, Dennis? This is something that you and many others who claim that they are civilized and modern still do not know how to do up until today. So Dennis, the Quran and the authentic Sunnah do not contain any myths, any absurdities, and I'm waiting for you to produce your proofs if you are truthful in your claims. Then he goes on to mention in his article, he mentions a story from the Hindu culture. Anybody who's interested in reading what he said can go back to the article, but I would only recommend that students of knowledge or those who are firmly grounded in knowledge of the Quran and knowledge of Sunnah would go back to this and read it. So he mentions a doubt or a story or a myth from one of the Hindu stories, and I say in response to that, Dennis, what is the relationship between Hinduism and the topic of discussion here and the title of your article, Dennis? What you're saying here is mere opinion and personal doubts and misconceptions, and doesn't benefit us at all, Dennis. Nor does it prove your claim, nor is it evidence to your claims that the Quran and Sunnah contain scientific absurdities. But it's a good try. You tried to compare Hinduism with Islam, and this is also from your misunderstanding and lack of knowledge of Islam as well as Hinduism. One thing, Islam has been preserved. The resources of Islam, the Quran and the authentic Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ have been preserved with chains of narration. That the Lord of the heavens, the Lord of the creation, He has promised Himself that He will preserve it. As for Hinduism, then it doesn't have authentic teachings, and their teachings haven't been preserved like those in Islam. So this is the most essential and fundamental difference. So then Dennis in his article, he goes on to mention about the story of Maryam and Jesus. How about the virgin birth. The virgin birth, he says that this is a myth, this is a fallacy, this is a scientific absurdity. So I say to him, Dennis, listen, there's really nothing to respond to here. But, Dennis, as we all know, he's a supernaturalist. He does not believe in God, nor does he believe in the supernatural. And anyone who believes in God must believe that God could make anything to occur. So if I was Dennis and someone who was an anti-supernaturalist, then for a tree to speak through natural means may be considered absurd and impossible. But in a world where God exists, in which all intellectuals and all of those who think rationally and logically believe and know, right? If in a world which God exists, in which He does, then this would certainly be possible and very easy for the Creator. Dennis, you're begging the question here and assuming that naturalism is true, yet you still must prove what you assume before pushing forth this argument, Dennis. And furthermore, this story is authentic. This story is authentic. Not only do Christians believe it, but Muslims as well. And it really happened with Mary and her son Jesus. Just as the Quranic verses prove, just as if somebody was to open the Bible proves as well. And this is from the miracles that not only do we as Muslims believe in and establish it, but Christians as well. And not only us, but also all those with sound intellects, logical reasoning, and a detailed response of this will come through later on in the article. So I ask you seriously, Dennis. Excuse my selection of words here, but what type of ignoramus would say that it is impossible for a child to be created in the womb of its mother without a father? When the Creator is possible for Him to do all things. So this is impossible in whose view, Dennis, or according to whose capabilities or standards? Certainly, this is impossible for someone who is ignorant and deficient. For example, similarly to the completely blind person seeing the moon, or the eyes seeing the beauty of a woman solely because it is not possible. Or someone crippled or paralyzed running on his two legs in a marathon. So let me ask you a question then. Who is the one who guides the female fluid, the female seminal fluid, or as you can say, the woman's egg or ovum? Who is the one who guides the ovum and guides the male sperm into the womb? Who is the one who guides those sperms to fertilize the ovum? It is either by coincidence, which is not an absolute law, and something that doesn't constantly occur, or it is an action from a supreme and complete and perfect doer. And this is what all intellectuals agree upon, from every religion and every way of life, except for the polytheists and many of the atheists of our time. So if all of these occurrences were done by a doer, Dennis, then this disproves your claim and falsifies your proofs solely because the Creator is capable to do all things. He created Adam from clay and created Jesus from Mary without a father. He created Adam from clay without a father and the mother. So what is more difficult? Creating Adam from clay without a mother and father, or creating Jesus from Mary without a father? And creating something from clay can be considered more difficult than creating a human from blood and flesh. Every day, Dennis, scientists and researchers discover new things that were unknown yesterday, that were unknown last week, and were unknown last year. The new technological, oceanic, space, and medical discoveries are increasing as time goes by, where researchers and scientists are discovering new types of viruses from various kinds of bacteria. And this perhaps could be considered from the knowledge that the majority of people don't know or don't believe in. And what people don't know about themselves, Dennis, and the intricate workings of the systems within inside their bodies is far more than what they do know about themselves. So the things we don't even know about ourselves and the workings of our bodies is far more than the things that we do know about ourselves. And if this is not true, if this is not true, then why do we become sick? Why do we grow older? Why do we sleep? What is sleep? Why do we eat? Is it possible for us to live without food? All of these things that I mentioned surround us on our daily lives. And some of us don't know the true reality of them. So why didn't this cause a revolution and cause people to show an objection to these things? Science and genetic engineering and stem cell research is underway, and this could possibly shed light on specific traits and characteristics that are either present and dormant in certain species or present and active within different types of species that cause them to act contrary or different than the other creatures from their similar species. For example, some plants become green in the summer, others become green in the fall. Some plants disappear during the rainy season. Some animals don't drink water. Other animals hibernate for the winter to the point that they almost freeze and become as hard as ice. But then when water comes, they come back to life. All of these can be considered miracles solely because they go against the norm for us as human beings and go against the norm for the things that we are used to observing. But for the Creator, who is capable of doing all things, then this is easy for him, because he is the one that all of those with sound intellects and upright dispositions bear witness to his existence and submit. So then Dennis, he goes on to mention a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is an authentic hadith in Sahih Muslim, talking about the tree of Gharqad, and talking about how can a tree talk, how does it have vocal cords and things like this. So I say, Dennis, listen. Indeed, as I mentioned, all intellectuals and all those who think rationally and logically know that the Lord and the Creator of the universe is great and magnificent. And all of those with sound intellects and pure natural dispositions, we know He's capable of doing all things. So if you, Dennis, if you truly believed in the Creator and in His beautiful attributes and characteristics and His never-ending capabilities, then the knot would be untied for you, and your doubts and problems of misunderstanding would be solved. So my question to you is, who is the one who makes the thinking faculty in the intellect in the brain or heart? And the sounds from the vocal cords and the pronunciation of words and sound on the tongue. If you said, Dennis, that this was coincidence, then I would have to say that you are mistaken. Solely because a coincidence does not make billions of people throughout the world with different traits, different characteristics, different pitches of voice, different tones. All of them speak and pronounce and yell and scream and cry and laugh. And the sound of that person's voice is different than this one. And the pitch of that one's voice is louder than that one. So this is impossible. So if this is possible, Dennis, if this is possible, that all of these things in the creation we see, so what is more strange, Dennis? What is more strange? That we see all of these human beings and all of these creatures on the face of the earth which have vocal cords and pronounce and speak in their different languages, their different tones, their different things like this. What is more strange? That a tree talks? Or the semen that is mixed with the ovum and then produces blood, produces flesh, produces bones, produces intellect, produces hearts, produces brains, produces eyes, produces noses, tongues, and teeth are brought forth from? What is more strange? A rock speaking, or the constant cycles and organization of the sun, the moon, the stars, and the planets? What is more strange? The enormous mountains and the deep oceans and all the creatures it contains, or a stone speaking? All of these things are interrelated, Dennis. And whoever believed in the former will believe in the latter. And whoever disbelieved in the former, as yourself, disbelieves in the latter. And our intellects that are created are not the tools used to measure everything we see around us. If the human being is incapable of knowing his own self and the intricate workings of his own body, then how could he possibly come to complete knowledge about other things within this world? Let me ask you a question. For example, if somebody's neck is cut off, why? If somebody's neck is cut off, why do they die? But if their legs are cut off, they don't die. Now there exist observational devices, spying devices, recording devices, iPhones, cell phones, that are far above our imaginations 50, 60, 100 years ago. But now they have reached the highest level of human production. And they are inanimate objects. The cell phones that we have, they're inanimate objects. They're made of metal, they're made of plastic, they're made of glass and the likes. But they produce sounds. They produce sounds. They produce noises. So if this is the case, if you're saying that it's impossible for inanimate objects to make sounds or produce noises, right? So if this is the case, that our cell phones are inanimate objects, our TVs are inanimate objects, the computers are inanimate objects, if it's possible that they produce sounds, then what about the Creator and the Lord of the universe? How do you know, Dennis? How do you know about that tree? What type of certainty and knowledge do you have about how the tree grows, how the tree communicates, how the tree dies, how the tree propagates? Perhaps the tree has its own language, just as it has a life and lives and grows. The tree perhaps becomes happy and depressed in a way that we cannot even perceive or fathom. And if you were to say that love and hate and emotions are only restricted for human beings, then I would say again, Dennis, that you are mistaken. And you have gone against reality as well as common sense and as well as rational thinking. And the five senses that you only use to make your conclusions. Many animals, if you look in the animal kingdom and use your five senses, to observe what is around you, Dennis, many animals long and desire for their families and relatives. Even some trees will only grow in certain types of soil. If you take a tree from one place and plant it in another place, sometimes the tree grows, sometimes the tree dies. How many times have you seen a tree uprooted, for example, and then replanted and it refuses to grow? So all of these things, Dennis, that we mentioned is what those who are religious call what? Call miracles. Scientists and researchers are continuously discovering new things. And what they don't know is far more than what they do know. There are so many things that even the greatest scientists cannot explain today. So perhaps your doubts and misunderstandings are from this category. Also, it is well known, Dennis, amongst botanists and biologists that plants resemble human beings in many traits: fertilization, pregnancy, death, as well as giving forth good fruits, right? Giving forth offspring, as well as bad and corrupted offspring as well, and fruits. There are some plants in humans that are sterile, some that are tall, some that are short. Both have seeds that they plant. Similarly, Dennis, the Muslims do not believe that everything in the Quran, this is very important, we do not believe that everything in the Quran and the Sunnah needs to contain a scientific miracle. And this is because the Quran and Sunnah were revealed as guidance for all human beings. They contain texts that are warnings and others that are promises. They contain stories of the past as well as miracles. And the miracles that were mentioned in the Quran and Sunnah were not mentioned as the sole goal or sole intent of their mentioning. So we'll stop here and we'll conclude in part 2 to go on refuting Dennis Jaron's false claims in his article contained on the website infidels.org. And as a closing advice to my brothers, my friends, my colleagues, we've seen in recent years the increase in doubts and misconceptions and propaganda against Islam, against the Quran and the Sunnah. So it's upon the people of knowledge and upon the students of knowledge to put forth rebuttals, academic rebuttals with proofs and evidences, and busy themselves with that which will benefit them and that which will benefit their religion. Focus your rebuttals on those who are trying to tarnish the reputations of Muslims, of Islam, of the Quran, of the Sunnah, of the companions. So, inshallah, until part 2, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be with all of you, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us to the truth and make the Quran and Sunnah more beloved to us than anything else within the universe after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant all of you goodness and guidance. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.